Okay, we might make a start. I want to begin by acknowledging country. I am enjoying a beautiful time here on Wulgurukaba and Bindal country at our Bebegu Yumba campus. I know many of you are used to me Zooming from my home office down in Naarm of Wurundjeri country, but I am up here on the beautiful country of Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples, and I would like to acknowledge their elders past and present for their ongoing care and continued claim to this place. I want to acknowledge all the country that everyone is joining us from today, and I particularly want to acknowledge all the country up there where our speaker for today is joining us from at Yarrabah. We have with us today Ross Andrews, who is a Jungan and Yalanji man from far north Queensland. Many of you would know him from his time as Mayor of Yarrabah Aboriginal Shire Council. He's a graduate of James Cook University and has devoted his life to working towards Yarrabah development across all facets of everyday life for mob who live there. He's been involved in a number of local and regional organisations, almost too many to list, Ross, across health, governance, youth services, housing, and the mighty Yarrabah Seahawks. Today, he speaks with us in his role with the Yarrabah Leaders Forum, and he's going to be sharing with us his thoughts and reflection on how this work approaches the task of self-determination, sharing with us work on the Yarrabah roadmap. So I would like everyone to join me in thanking Ross for his time with us this morning. He's going to deliver a presentation, and then as always, we will open up for some reflections and questions from the room. So thank you for being with us, Ross.
Yep, thank you very much for the introduction. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the country I'm zooming in from, Yarrabah community, the home of the Kunganji and the further to the south of the Yidingi people. Also want to acknowledge the stolen generation members and families who've been traditionally dispossessed, who now call Yarrabah home as well, including myself. I'm a my connection to country is a Kukujangan and a Kukuyalanji man. My grandfather was taken from the Daintree, and my other grandfather was taken from Mount Mulligan, which is west of Dimbula and Mariba. So I just want to acknowledge that. I just want to say thank you to JCU for allowing me to present what we believe is our roadmap. I know that we've just come off a unsuccessful campaign with the referendum, and Yarrabah obtained 76% for our say in having a local and regional voice in our area. So Yarrabah Leaders Forum been going for the last 10 plus years. It's a local model. It's a domestic model, but it's a model that we believe works for our community. But it also is a model that is, I guess, integrated into the domestic model in Australia. So I'll just go through the power slide. Thank you. Thanks to Sana and Professor Nakatar as well, and Nari Anari as well, and all the JCU allowing me to do this presentation. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, but this is our profile of our organisations. Yeah, we started back in 2013 as a local model, around a campfire, on a voluntary basis, social barbecue. A handful of us just got together on a farm and said, how can we contribute to the betterment of our community. So we weren't being paid anything. We just sat around and informally and just said, how can we make our community better? Because from what we were seeing locally, but nationally as well, the data was going in the wrong direction. And we just had a common understanding to try and get a group of people, like-minded people, to sit around a campfire and yarn, and how can we come up with something that we believe is leadership and driven by community. So we had workshops, we've had summits, we came up with pillars and priorities. We've had summits in community, but we also took a delegation to Brisbane to meet with ministers and director generals and senior staff within government departments to give our case. The membership of the YLF, or Yarrabah Leaders Forum, is there's about 12 organisations that have membership through the chair and the CEO, and the board of those organisations have to move a resolution to become part of the YLF. So we have some rules around membership in governments. Our role was united leadership and giving a sense of way in terms of doing business with government differently. And we've now have an office manned by 1.5 staff. So it's a bit of a journey of that 10 plus years, but I think it's a journey well invested in. But I just also wanted to mention that I did flick around a newsletter last night. The title of that newsletter is Yarrabah. Now, Yarrabah, back in, I think, 1908, Yarrabah had their own form of system of parliamentarian. So that upper house and lower house. So it didn't really start 12 years ago, but 2013, but it did start many, many years ago in Yarrabah. So those are the members there of Yarrabah Leaders. Yarrabah Council have a new council, which is a work in progress. Yarrabah still has a king through the Kunganji people and their association with the Anglican Church. There's the Jungal Elders Group. There's a youth rep. We have the 2 PBCs, prescribed body corporates, which is the Northern and Southern PBC. We have the health service, aged care, Gindaja, the Justice Group, Diringi, which is an arts corporation, both footy clubs, an employment network that is owned and driven locally by our people, Wuganumbu, and then we have the church. We have quasi-members such as the police and schools, so they attend our meetings as well. And then it's a work in progress with the Women's Resource Centre. So that's a combination of a coalition of service providers that are united in our leadership, not only about service delivery, but also advocacy. So our journey started, like I say, in 2013, but we've done thinking and concept mapping. We've had meetings. We do forums in the community with elders, youths, men's and women's forum every year to get an appreciation of what the organisations or what people are saying in the community. So that's been pretty good. And I did mention that we did take a delegation a few times to Brisbane at 1 William Street of our leaders to do things differently with government. We've had end-to-end meetings, strategic planning, data workshops, and other various summits. So we did a lot of that concept thinking in terms of our journey, how we can elevate our leadership, but also be united in our leadership that brings our aspirations and our ambitions to the front of government. So that's our journey over the last 10 years. So, we started in 2012, 2013. And at the blue end there, 2024, we finally became incorporated as an entity, Jabu Mugai, which is meaning in the local dialect, ground up. So over that 10-year period, we managed to build our capacity, I guess, and acknowledge that the work we've been doing is very important. So 2024 was a year of taking it and elevating it to the next level. But before I go further, I just want to acknowledge the work that our late YLF member, Cleveland Fagan, did in terms of that 10-year period, in terms of getting us to where we are today. And just have a cup. A glass of water. But a lot of work was done with planning and meetings and nights and days in terms of how best we could, I guess, make Yarrabah a better place. And with the work of the YLF in Cleveland and Ruth, I think, we were going in a new direction, and we were celebrating the work that we've been doing over the last 12 years or more. So that's a little bit of our journey from 2012 to 2024, and but we believe that there's still more work up ahead. So to set the scene, sorry, we call it the dugong diagram, which is, I guess, maybe a little bit of universal amongst many of our discrete First Nations communities. Is we did some sampling or some modelling around about 800 work for the adult clients through our Job Active. And this diagram is typical of many of our people who are on the welfare trap and really find it hard to elevate into the blue and the maroon area. So I think from about 16, when our kids finish school, they finish school and they either jump on youth allowance or the unemployment benefits. So we live below poverty, which is that 22.5K line. It's the Australian poverty line. So up until about 50 or 60, we start plateauing out equal to the Australian poverty line. So we die, as you know, we die a little bit earlier than the average Australian. That's the middle one. The blue one is the profile of the average Yarrabian. Those people are working full-time in Yarrabah. So we earn a bit more and we die just a little bit later. But the maroon one is typically the unemployed, or the profile of the average Queenslander. So they earn a bit more and they live a bit longer. But for this particular diagram, our greatest work of the Yarrabah Leaders Forum, and you'll probably see it in the next few slides, our greatest work is from 0 to 16, or even prenatal to 16. Our greatest work has to happen. I'm not sure if I can show this, but up in that area there, 0 to 16. So that's where our pillar should be focused on. before we become trapped on the other disposable poverty line. This way. That's it there. Sorry, I'm just a bit lost. So our roadmap is a strategic intent over the 10-year review. And so we want to be guided for the next 3 years, I guess. And the key components of that is our rules, vision, values, and members, aspirations, governance, readiness, and our approach, we believe locally to close the gap, and a collective impact approach. What if you bring it on this one? So we have a set of rules that Yarrabah Leaders Forum adopted, driven by Charter of Rules, but also our accord, so which binds us as decision making to each other. So we do it so that we're guided by some rules and accord. So it guides our decision making and the process how we relate to each other, bad relationships. Yeah, our vision is, one mob, one fire, one journey. We have a set of values in terms of unification, unified leaders. We want to be courageous as well. We want to stay focused. We want to be accountable, not only to government, but to ourselves. And we always do our best to put Yarrabah first. So whilst I talk about unification, it doesn't mean that we all share the same ideas, but I think there are things that happens in meetings where we're not always agreeable, and we have really robust discussions, which is healthy. But at the end of the day, when we walk through that door, when our meeting's finished, we always want to put Yarrabah first. So those are I think it's about 6 pillars or 7 with the support of foundation. So I think this pillar is pretty universal as well. One mob, one fire, one journey. So safe, everybody wants a safe community. Everybody wants to have full employment. We want smart kids and a smart community and innovative. We want to be sustainable, healthy, and most importantly, we want to keep our culture strong. So that's our 7-pillar model and aspiration. So, and as I mentioned, I think it's pretty universal about those pillars. Well, this is a interdependency matrix where all the pillars are dependent on each other. So we can't have a healthy community if mum and dad doesn't have a house, or kids are not going to school because they don't have a kitchen table to have dinner, or mum and dad's unemployed. So all the matrices are dependent on each other, and they don't stand alone. They all interconnect. They're all interconnected. They're all related. So we just don't address things in isolation. It's an interdependent relationship we have with each other and those pillars. So I was talking about the office before. That's Leaders Forum. That's our reporting, secretariat and member organisation. So those 13 organisations. We have 1.5 staff based here in the office. So yeah, the Leaders Forum set the strategic direction based on community needs. They're solution focused. They maintain relationships either internally and externally with governments and NGOs, and they play an advocacy and a lobby role as well. So, and the staff member 1.5 I talked about, and then our organisation. So, we've been talking to government about improving or increasing our staffing levels, given we identify ourselves as a backbone organisation. We are not an empowered community site, but the investment compared to an empowered community site is very minimal. And we've just got to keep working hard and getting governments to invest in our model. It's a little bit about the structures and our governance externally with governments and having roundtable with ministers and general champions. We have a strategic plan. We have working groups with those pillars. And external to that is the national close the gap structures and the Queensland close the gap structures, state and Commonwealth and government departments. So how can we connect with our own CTG agenda with the national and the state body around their close the gap campaign? At the moment, there's no connection. Those are some of the work that we're still working on with some of the pillars, with our pillar leads. So there's an education pillar, there's a health pillar, there's the other pillars around safe communities. So many of the organisations, so there's 3 organisations that does health, Gurney, Gundarja and Woodkin. So they look after the health pillar, so they lead it, those discussions with internally, with community, but also externally with government and non-government. So they take responsibility for their pillars, and they bring it back to the YLF. So similar to the Jobs and Economic Development Plan, we have a job active we've been operating for the last few years. So it's our own model, owned locally by community, and we believe that it's working effectively in comparisons to other job actives that have been working here. I mean, the job actives have been getting people into jobs externally Yarrabah in the agricultural and farming areas, plus mining industry and the tourism and the art sector. So, yeah, we believe our model, whilst we still have challenges there, we believe it's working good. So our readiness, yeah. So we've had a good 10 or 12 years, 13 years doing this stuff. And I guess our readiness for the next 10 to 30 years is how best can we develop new systems and processes for better outcome. So I've talked a little bit about that, the Leaders Forum and their roadmap, the strategic and the operational plan, communication plan, cultural protocols framework. We still have to work with the elders and the prescribed body corpus on a cultural framework. So, a lot of this is still work in progress, community engagement plan, and governments and NGOs. It's just a work in progress around advocacy and lobbying and working group framework. So we still know that we have a lot of work to do up ahead. And, we've been advocating to government about more support around supporting 1.5 staff here in this office. So yeah, I talked about before that there's no connection between us and state and feds with regards to CTG, but we're lucky that we own our own health service here, and we're working with the National University about data governance and data storage. So, I mean, if you have your own data, you can it can make things easier in terms of looking at the landscape and the picture of how we're doing. But we know there's many reforms happening out there. And, our CTG targets are similar in terms of living a healthy and active life. Our kids are born healthy. Kids are going to school. Labour market, we're increasing our labour market. Economic opportunities for our community. So we're trying to do our best to try and align what we do in Yarrabah to those national and state CTG campaigns. So we know one of the other communities have done an investment map or an audit in terms of how much investment's in their community. So we were hopeful Yarrabah was the next cab off the rank to have a look at what type of investment is made in our community. And we believe it's completed. It's just trying to access it. So we know the money story of what is happening, whether it's service delivery or social planning and infrastructure. But we just need the data in terms of what's happening out there. Talked about the national reform in terms of partnership and shared decision making, building the community control sector. So I'd say we're about 80% there with, our community organisations that have their own boards and their own staff and employees. So a lot of it is community owned and community driven through those organisations. And we have the police and the education department as quasi members. So we know that with a lot of investment, we can build our community control, not only internally, but externally as well. We want to look at transforming governments, how they work, or organisations, and shared access from governments back to community, But we're pretty lucky here. We have our own organisations, and we're working on a shared data model through the university. We know what the barriers to system reform is: trust gap, power imbalance, inequitable resource distribution, equitable engagement, legacy systems and process, resistance to change, bureaucratic culture. So we know that with the trust gap, the elephant and the mass situation with power imbalance. So yeah, it's nothing new what we're up against, but we just got to keep on challenging the system, I guess. And we'll talk about a little bit of our collective approach in the next slide. So our collective impact approach to achieving aspirations within CTG is although we know our community, we want to understand them fully. So we want to develop a Yarrabah profile. We formed a leadership group and we've just become incorporated. So, we're well and truly on the road. So we want to define our common agenda, shared measure and align activities. We still want to communicate, build trust and relationship, advocate, support capacity. We also don't get an opportunity to celebrate our successes and learn from our failure. We want to keep the momentum going and evaluate and adapt. So, it's our collective impact and how we want to do it in community. And some of the universities have been really integral in terms of building our capacity, but also supporting us and developing lateral challenges, or solutions to those challenges. And other than developing solutions that are traditionally based, we've tried to step outside of that square and think differently about how we challenge governments about making a difference. The outcomes you know, strategic aspirations in the Yarrabah pillars and the CTG measures. At the end of the day, in terms of systemic change, we want real and equitable partnerships, state and common relationships, flexible, agile culture, efficient and effective systems, be innovative and focus on the outcomes, supporting policy, environment, and investment reform. So, yeah, we'll just have to keep on keeping on and keep advocating as hard as we want. But we ask the question also, what is that what we want? How can we share our learning? How can we support each other? And how do we reform the system? And that's the end of my power slide. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ross. I was reflecting on a couple of things while you were speaking. One thing, because you mentioned the failed referendum last year, and I recall during that campaign we were, lots of people all across the country were at pains to point out to the public that communities already do this work. Local communities have been doing this for a long time. They've been doing it for thousands of years, but even in the contemporary moment, that people have been building forms of local governance representation in order to support their people and communities, because government has failed to do that. And I think today was just a really informative and brilliant insight into what Yarrabah has been doing for at least a decade, but as you said, going back even further than that. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing all of that with those of us in our research network today.
Yeah, no, thank you, because as I mentioned, we do have robust discussions, but when we walk out the door, we're always going to put Yarrabah first.
Yeah.
Whilst we're unified.
That's it did come through really strongly, and I think it really marks out the way that you've worked and led this work in Yarrabah is set apart from other examples. So I think a lot of the challenges that you've described, many communities would probably recognise, and what you've just talked about, governance, I can't think of an Aboriginal or Islander organisation that probably doesn't reckon with that tension. But what you've also set out is like a really principled and coherent and exciting and energizing framework that you're working with in Yarrabah. And, it must be really hard work. So thank you for all of that work that you do in Yarrabah, but thank you also for the time that you give us at JCU and to our centre in meeting with our students and talking with our staff. Because we always learn so much. And so on that note, I just want to say thank you very much for your time, Ross. Thank you to everyone for joining. Stay tuned for the last couple of seminars we'll have in October and November. But I will leave you to your lunches. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Sana and the team down there.